The Greek poleis system. What a poleis was, how it developed, and why Greece remained politically divided. A poleis, with the plural poleis, was an independent Greek political community. City-state is the usual English translation, but a poleis was not simply a city. It included the people, their government, the central town, nearby villages, farmland, religious sites, and the surrounding countryside. Imagine that the United States did not exist as one country. Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, and the countryside around each city are separate countries. Each has its own government, laws, army, and citizens. They speak the same language and share traditions, but they can still make alliances or fight one another. That is roughly how the poleis system worked. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes were all poleis. Their people spoke forms of Greek and worshipped many of the same gods, but they were not provinces of one Greek nation. Each poleis made its own political decisions and guarded its independence. The poleis developed over centuries. Before it, Mycenaean civilization flourished from roughly 1600 to 1200 BCE. Powerful palace centers stood at Mycenae, Turin, Pylos, Thebes, Athens, and other places. These palace kingdoms were organized differently from the later citizen communities called poleis. A Mycenaean kingdom centered on a palace. At the top stood a ruler called the wanax, something like a king. Officials recorded crops, livestock, land, workers, taxes, weapons, and stored goods. They used Linear B, the earliest known written form of Greek. Authority and economic management flowed from the center. Beginning around 1200 BCE, the Eastern Mediterranean entered a major crisis called the Late Bronze Age collapse. Many Mycenaean palaces were destroyed or abandoned. By about 1100 BCE, the palace system had largely disappeared. Greece no longer had the same large bureaucracies directing society from royal centers. Historians do not explain the collapse with one simple cause. Warfare, political instability, population movements, broken trade networks, food shortages, earthquakes in some areas, and internal conflicts may all have contributed. Different places probably experienced different combinations of problems. The centuries after the collapse are traditionally called the Greek Dark Age. The name mainly reflects the sharp reduction in written evidence. It does not mean nothing happened. Linear B disappeared from use, populations fell in many areas, and large palace institutions gave way to smaller settlements. People often lived in small farming villages, scattered settlements, or communities led by local elites and powerful families. Over time, these communities recovered, formed new relationships, and developed stronger local identities. The disappearance of palace rule created space for different political arrangements to grow. Greece's mountains divide the mainland into valleys, plains, peninsulas, and coastal pockets. Islands dispersed settlement across the Aegean. This geography did not make the poleis inevitable, but terrain and distance helped many local centers persist and made lasting political unification difficult. Geography worked in two directions. Mountains divided communities on land, but the Aegean and Mediterranean seas connected them through shipping and trade. Greek communities developed an unusual combination: political separation alongside cultural and economic connection. Starting around the 10th and 9th centuries BCE, conditions improved in many regions. Population increased, agriculture expanded, settlements grew, and trade became more active. By the 8th century BCE, small communities were increasingly organizing into larger and more structured political units. Historians usually identify the 8th century BCE as the crucial period when the poleis became recognizable. The change did not happen everywhere at once, and no single model fit every region. By about 750 to 700 BCE, however, many Greek communities displayed the institutions and identity associated with poleis. A recognizable polis usually had a defined territory, a central settlement, political and religious institutions, laws or customs, a citizen body, military responsibilities, and a strong claim to political independence. None of these features alone made a polis. Together, they formed a self-governing community. The polis was not only a place or government. In many poleis, citizens increasingly identified as members of a political community, not merely subjects of a palace ruler. This shift applied to citizens rather than every inhabitant, and it meant shared laws, duties, religious obligations, military service, and political interests. Many poleis developed through synocism, from the Greek synokismos, meaning something like bringing households together. Nearby villages did not always move physically into one enormous city. Instead, they gradually agreed, or were compelled, to belong to one political unit with shared institutions. Attica contained many settlements. Over time, they became politically united under Athens. Later Athenian tradition credited the mythical hero Theseus with this union, but historians do not read the story as a literal account of one event. The process probably happened gradually across generations. The main urban center of a polis could be called the astai. Within it, the agora was an open public space that could serve as a marketplace, meeting place, political center, social gathering area, and setting for religious activities. The astai concentrated civic life, but it was only one part of the larger polis. The Acropolis was the high city, usually a defensible hill above the main settlement. It might be fortified and often held important temples, treasuries, and sacred spaces. The Athenian Acropolis became the most famous example, but many poleis had their own elevated religious or defensive centers. Outside the astai lay the chora, the surrounding countryside. It contained farms, villages, pasture, forests, roads, and religious sites. Since agriculture supported most Greek economies, the chora was essential. A polis could not survive as an isolated cluster of city buildings. The easiest physical formula is city plus countryside plus people plus government equals polis. The astai provided an urban center. The chora supplied land and villages. Citizens and other residents formed society. Institutions organized the community and represented its independence. Ancient writers often described a polis by naming its citizen body. Instead of speaking only about Athens as land or buildings, they wrote about the Athenians. The citizen body collectively formed the political state, even though women, enslaved people, resident foreigners, and other inhabitants also lived and worked within the polis. A citizen had a recognized political relationship with the polis. Depending on the community, duties could include military service, religious ceremonies, political assemblies, public office, taxes or contributions, and defense of the territory. Citizenship joined rights to responsibilities. Political rights were not universal. In most poleis, direct participation in assemblies and public office belonged to adult-free men from citizen families. Women, enslaved people, foreigners, and resident immigrants were commonly excluded from political decision-making, although their legal status and the exact rules differed by polis. The polis system did not mean democracy. A polis was a type of political community, not a single form of government. Different poleis used monarchies, aristocracies, oligarchies, tyrannies, democracies, and mixed systems at different times. A monarchy placed authority in one king. Kings existed in early Greek history. though monarchy became less common in many archaic poleis. An aristocracy was government dominated by a small group of elite families, usually wealthy landowners who described themselves as the best. In archaic Greece, a tyrant typically established one-person rule outside normal constitutional traditions. In some cases, successors inherited the regime. The word did not automatically mean a ruler was personally cruel. Some tyrants weakened aristocratic rivals, sponsored temples, supported trade, or governed effectively, while others ruled harshly. The best-known democracy developed at Athens. Reforms associated with Cleisthenes around 508 and 507 BCE reorganized citizenship and political participation. Eventually, many male citizens could vote directly in assemblies and serve in public institutions. Democracy was one possible polis system, not the Greek default. Athens became known for democracy, naval power, trade, philosophy, theater, and art. Sparta built a highly militarized society with two kings, a council of elders called the Gerousia, elected ephors, and an assembly of male citizens. Spartan citizen training depended heavily on helot labor, especially from Messenia. Both were poleis, but their institutions and priorities differed sharply. Several archaic developments had helped make these different political systems possible. Greek religion was woven into civic life. Each polis maintained temples, festivals, sacrifices, calendars, and patron gods. Athens honored Athena. Sparta gave special prominence to figures including Apollo and Artemis Orthia. Civic identity and religious identity reinforced one another. A person could think of himself as Greek and also Athenian, Spartan, Corinthian, or Theban. The local identity could be extremely strong. Shared language, gods, myths, heroic stories, sanctuaries, and athletic competitions created a larger cultural world without creating one government. Panhellenic sanctuaries and festivals connected people across polis boundaries. The traditional first recorded Olympic Games date is 776 BCE. Eligible Greek men from different poleis could compete or attend at Olympia while still remaining citizens of separate states. Shared culture coexisted with political division. After centuries of reduced literacy, Greek writing reappeared around the 8th century BCE in an alphabet adapted from Phoenician writing. Surviving Linear B had been used mainly for palace administration. The alphabet was more flexible for laws, dedications, trade records, poetry, and public inscriptions. It helped communities preserve and display information beyond oral memory. As poleis grew, customary rules were increasingly written down. Athens appointed Draco around 621 BCE, then Solon introduced major reforms around 594 BCE. Written laws did not guarantee fairness, but they made rules more public, more fixed, and harder to alter informally. Government became more institutional and less dependent on private memory. Archaic Greek armies increasingly used hoplites, heavily armed infantry carrying round shields, spears, helmets, and armor. Hoplites often fought in close phalanxes, like a wall of shields and spears. Military service tied citizens to collective defense, although historians debate how directly it changed politics. Greek society was primarily agricultural, so land was the main source of wealth. As populations grew, pressure on farmland increased. Poor farmers could fall into debt while large landowners gained influence. These tensions contributed to law reforms, factional struggles, tyrannies, colonization, and changes in citizenship. Between about 750 and 550 BCE, Greek settlers founded communities around the Mediterranean and Black Sea, including parts of modern Italy, France, Spain, Turkey, Ukraine, Romania, and Libya. Massalia became modern Marseille. Byzantium later became Constantinople and then Istanbul. A group might leave a metropolis, meaning mother city, to establish a new settlement. The colony usually became an independent polis rather than a permanently controlled province. Religious, cultural, and trading links could remain, but the new community made its own political decisions. Colonization therefore multiplied the polis model. Most Greeks accepted that they shared a civilization, but they did not conclude that they needed one government. Poleis fought over borders, farmland, trade, alliances, and influence. During the Persian Wars, a shifting coalition cooperated at Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea. Athens and Plataea had earlier fought at Marathon in 490 BCE. Once the external threat weakened, competition returned. After the Persian Wars, Athens led the Delian League, founded in 478 or 477 BCE, and gradually turned the alliance into an empire-like system. Sparta and its allies resisted. The Peloponnesian War from 431 to 404 BCE ended in Spartan victory, but decades of conflict continued. Meanwhile, Philip II built a powerful Macedonian state and reformed its army. In 338 BCE, he defeated Athens and Thebes at Chaeronea. Poleis survived, but increasingly operated inside larger leagues, kingdoms, and empires. The polis developed through a chain of connected changes. Mycenaean palace rule collapsed. Smaller local communities rebuilt. Mountains encouraged separation while the sea maintained connections. Population, agriculture, and trade grew. Villages joined through synocism. Citizens, institutions, religion, military service, written law, and colonization strengthened the polis. Knowledge check. What was a polis? Think about it. The answer is a self-governing Greek political community made up of people, territory, institutions, an urban center, and countryside. What developments helped the polis emerge after the palace collapse? Think about it. The answer is localized communities persisted, population and trade recovered, synocism joined settlements and institutions, law, religion, and military duties developed. Knowledge check. Why did Greek geography favor many independent communities? Think about it. The answer is mountains and islands separated settlements, while the sea connected them through trade and culture. Who normally held direct political rights in a polis, and who was commonly excluded? Think about it. The answer is adult-free male citizens usually participated in assemblies and offices. Women, enslaved people, foreigners, and resident immigrants were commonly excluded from political decision-making. Knowledge check. How did the Astai and Chora fit together? Think about it. The answer is the Astai was the urban center. The Chora was the countryside that supplied farms, villages, and resources. How did Athens and Sparta show that polis could govern themselves differently? Think about it. The answer is Athens developed direct democracy and naval power. Sparta combined kings, councils, ephors, and a citizen assembly. Not every polis was democratic. Knowledge check. How did colonization spread the polis system? Think about it. The answer is Greek settlers founded new communities that normally became independent polis around the Mediterranean and Black Sea. What tension defined the Greek polis system, and what changed under Macedonia? Think about it. The answer is Greeks shared a culture but usually insisted that each polis remain politically independent. After Philip II's victory in 338 BCE, Poleis survived but increasingly operated within larger power structures.